Hello, beautiful people. I am excited to come to you today because I have a friend, I have a guest that I am bringing in so that we can bring even more to this discussion, to this Awaken Your Inner Healer circle. And so let's see. Let's see if we can, yes, let's see if we can bring. So she's coming on, and so this is my one of my best friends, Tara Peak, who is also a wellness professional and a health coach, and it is also her passion to help other people live the lives we were all meant to lead, lives of health, wholeness, and thrive. So again, she's going to be popping up any second here, and we'll get started. So it's Thursday, July 11th, and this is the 5th week of Awaken Your Inner Healer Summer Challenge. And to those of you who are new, welcome. To those of you who have been sticking around and checking in, I'm glad you're here.
We got it working. Oh my gosh, technology.
Right?
Yeah. Let's see if I could turn this up though so I can hear you a little better. Now, can you hear me? I don't have my headpiece in or anything. Is this fine?
I think so. I'm hearing a reverberation. I don't know if you can do anything about that.
Like it sounds like an echo?
Like I'm hearing because it's coming through your mind.
Let's see. Let me try this. We'll find out if this makes it better.
Are you plugged in yet?
I am plugged in. How does it sound now?
So much better. Wow.
Yay. Okay. I'm seeing if I can prop this so there's not so much movement.
Yeah. So I was just telling them a little bit about you. So Tara is a mama, an herbalist, a health coach, a yoga teacher. Anything else we can add to the list that you want to say? Energy worker.
Oh my gosh, that's enough. That's good.
She's
not very good at figuring out the phone.
Yeah.
But hey,
yeah,
it's all working.
Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about emotional eating because this is something that plagues so many of us. I want to say it's mostly women, but it's men too. I just think there's more women that the emotional eating is an issue for, and it's there's so many different reasons for it, but I feel like it's kind of one of those elusive things. Like it's something that can plague you in a way, and you might not know that how to get out of it, what it's about, why it's even there. There's so many layers. So Tara and I just want to kind of unpack this a little bit, talk about it, demystify it, and give you some tips to to be able to combat it or balance it out or figure out what's going on with you and how you can make it better. Yay. Is there anything you want to like cursor, anything you want to say about that?
Most like just it's such a common thing for all of us to have, because emotions really are something that we haven't necessarily been trained to have an intelligence about. It's more or less they hit us, we respond, we react, and we're not even in our conscious brain a lot of times when these emotions come up. And so it's really hard to immediately shut them off and go into eating, or immediately shut them off and go into sleep, immediately shut them off and go into healing. So yes, I feel like there's definitely almost like a gratitude that we all get to kind of heal from this together, because it is something that we are just all being educated on at this
Yeah.
time. It's coming
Yeah.
into our awareness, and we all get to
Right.
transform together.
Yeah. So I'm going to springboard off of something you just said, two things that you just said that really like resonated and I wanted to like bring attention to is though we don't have, a lot of us don't have tools to, just to be emotionally intelligent. And so in our culture, there's this whole, it's normal to not show emotion unless it's positive. But even that, like there's like a limit of what's acceptable in our culture, and the negative emotions we are literally encouraged or forced at a young age to like stop them. And that
Yes.
is so then like instead of being aware that we even have these emotions coming up, for a lot of us it's it's a constant stuffing down. So there's like you don't even know you're feeling that because you haven't named it consciously, but it is there. And then the other
Right.
piece was how, when that's the case, like unlike animals, who I'm learning about how animals are able to switch back and forth so easily between sympathetic fight or flight and parasympathetic rest digest. They just do it, like, and we carry, instead, because we're not very conscious of it, we're carrying it and it's snowballing like
But I
forever.
feel like we used to. I feel like as a species, when we first started, we were like that. When we were being chased by the saber-toothed tiger, we immediately went into our sympathetic, and then we came out of it afterwards and continued to live our life. So this has been habits of our fast-paced modern world where we're not giving ourselves the time or the space to come into ourselves. We're not spending just hours outside in nature, connected to the rhythms of nature, connected to the sun, the rhythms of the sun and the moon, and being able to just sit on the land and watch those plants grow. We are fast, 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 move, move, move. We're not thinking about what's happening internally. So I think
Right.
that, in our species, we were just like the animals, and they're a great example of how we can also do that and go back and forth. And it just takes a little bit of tools of consciousness and of implying and creating these tools daily so that they become our new habits.
Yes. Well said. Yeah. So what are you, let's talk about maybe just kind of the why behind, what is emotional eating all about? Like, why are we, because I know one way that it shows up is overeating, right? Because we're not really
Mm-hmm.
tuned in. So we're like, and we're experiencing or there's an emotion there that maybe we don't want to feel. So eating can be a way that we fill that void, that we mask, that we dumb down, cop out, cope, right? Like with things. And then there's also just mindless eating, right? Where it's not, where we're just like kind of, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what are your, how do you see it showing up and why?
Yeah, I feel like a big part of the whys that it shows up for us is, yeah, that there is this internal void. And a lot of times when we feel these emotions that can be really intense, like anxiety, depression, just stress in itself, anger, we often don't have the tools to cope. And so what is we've learned from the very beginning of life that creates nourishment is our mother's milk, is anything that we put our mouth to. And so now we have these habits of, if it's not smoking or drinking or some of those oral habits, biting our nails, it comes to stuffing our mouth with food. And we're not even tasting the food we're stuffing with. We're just trying to get like the fattiest, the sugariest, any kind of really chemical shift in our brains. But we're using the food to go internal, and we don't even have this feeling of satiation. We're not feeling satisfied with anything we eat. So it's not even that we're not conscious of our emotions. It's all, well, that's a part of it, but it's also part that we don't know when to stop. It's just binging and binging and filling that void. And so the habit gets so heavy that without any other tool to calm those emotions or to try to switch those emotions into one that is a little more calming to our nervous system, we feel we need to be eating. And for a period of time, it probably worked because the sugars and the fats did give us a little bit of that relaxed feeling in our brains. And then we were like, this is working. And so it got to such a point where that has now been our habit. And then because of our blood sugars, now it's become a craving. So now we automatically go to food. We automatically go into that oral satiation that's never really being satisfied.
Yeah. I love the way you like brought it back to even breastfeeding and how like that is a natural way for us to calm our nervous system and feel loved, nurtured, satisfied, all of those things.
Yeah, there's been a lot of studies that really the majority of how we respond in our world is from old past patterns of sometimes the very beginning of life. These are habits that not just were formed because now we're in a working environment and we're dealing with stressful situations, or we're mothers and we're dealing with stressful situations. These are habits that have been ingrained in our subconscious from the very beginning of our life in this body.
Yeah.
And it just
Yeah.
takes a little bit of reframing and rewiring the entire brain to have these new habits and how to cope with these different situations. And then, in 2 weeks, we create a new habit. So when we apply and put these new tools to use, we really can just completely rewire our brains. And we become a whole
Yeah.
different person working on a whole different system. And
Yeah.
it teaches us, if we are mothers, how to do that for our children, instead of giving to
Yeah.
all of their cravings for food, because now they're already using food as a child. I need snacks. I need snacks. I notice this in my own son. He needs snacks all the time because it was all such a wonderful feeling when he was getting his nourishment from me. And now he's having a hard time finding those skills to cope with boredom or frustration or irritation or being ignored and not being able to get all the attention he desires. And if these are not worked with as an adult, he'll be just like any of us.
Yeah. I know exactly, like, I'm not going to name any family members, but I definitely have members that with my kids, they've like something happens, somebody's upset, they're crying for whatever reason. And instead of acknowledging the feeling, allowing the feeling and letting it pass, talking through it, whatever, want a cookie? Here, want a cookie?
Yeah.
And my mind's going, no, don't do that. Don't start that terrible habit.
And it's not even like want a carrot. Even if we were like using that type of food, which is still a big problem when we're even eating healthy food and we're in the sympathetic nervous system, our entire digestive just shuts down. So even if we're eating the healthiest food, it doesn't matter what your diet is. If you are not eating under a calm nervous system, you are not being able to assimilate any nutrients from your food. And these children are being like, oh, and a cookie? And that's making even more chemical imbalances, but more cravings and addictions forming. That's just that's feeding the fuel of this roller coaster.
I love that you brought up habits and how like these things, that's how it gets started. But then later on, like I would like to be able to think that ideally we as humans always make the best decision that we can make, right, at any given time. Like whatever the circumstance, we'll do what's best, not necessarily what we have done. But because habits are so deeply ingrained, that's not always the case. Oftentimes there's this bypass straight to whatever the habit is instead of like actually being able to make that best decision in the moment.
Right. And the majority of us who have experienced emotional eating, we're not even aware of that we're eating. Our mind is
Yeah.
somewhere else. We're just in
Right.
this motion and we don't even know what it tastes like. There's no sensual connection to the food. It's we are stuffing our mouth, but our brains are in another world. And
Yeah.
that has become also just a part of a very simple mindfulness tool.
Hmm. So even watching television while eating, although
Or
you know, if
reading.
you do, or reading, if it's something you do every once in a while, it's not the worst thing in the world. But if that's your norm, same thing. Total disconnection from the body, not knowing when you're full, not actually having the
Mhm,
experience of
mhm,
tasting, feeling, right? Have the sensualness that you brought up. Like
mhm.
sensual, some people, sensual means sexual. Sensual actually means that's how we take in everything in the world. Like that's how we have these bodies. The only way that we know or sense something is through our sense organs and our sensory perception. So that's what sensual is. It's like feeling. It's just feeling. And if we're not in touch with that feeling and in our bodies, then we bypass the experience,
Yes.
forget that we even had it, and still feel like we're missing and we need something else. It's not a good pattern. So what do
Right,
you like,
right.
what are some, yeah, what's something that small that we can give to people here that are watching, like a little tool that they can just start to play with?
Yeah, so there is this science-based program that was developed over the last 30 years by Lauren Mellon. She integrates advanced neurosciences and stress physiology that rewires your brain of anxiety, depression, and overeating. And
Mm-hmm.
there's these unhealthy habits that we have, and these are actually very easy tools to implement. Now, one of them is emotional house cleaning. So, emotional house cleaning is simple, like a daily check in. If you're gonna sit down to eat a meal, before you eat your meal, so I just wanna preface this with as we sit down to eat, 40% of our digestive response is our smell of the food, our thought of connecting to the food and eating what food that is. If it's a soup, it's going to be warm and come down into our system nice and warm and maybe salty and savory. If it's a salad, it's going to be crunchy and fresh and crisp. So we come into the idea of the food that we are eating, the smell, the sight, the taste, almost our saliva glands start to salivate. And
Mm-hmm.
that's 40% of our digestive response is just the awareness of food before it enters our mouth.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as the saliva builds, then we sit and we go through a daily check in. So this is like sit down before your meal, take a deep breath. Never just dive
Yeah.
in and start eating. Take a
Right.
deep breath,
I would say like sitting down. How many people are
right?
eating on the go, standing up in a car,
Mm-hmm.
driving, like just
Mm-hmm.
doing something else while they're
Yeah,
eating? So that
right.
piece of it, sitting is so important.
Yeah. And, because we do have these lifestyles, we can still incorporate this if we are in those movements. If we are like, okay, I have a short amount of time, I'm going to eat on the run, we can still sit down or stand and just take a daily check in. What's my heart rate doing? How am I feeling? Just ask that simple question. How am I feeling? Am I feeling great? Am I feeling good? Am I feeling a little stressed? Am I definitely stressed or am I really stressed out? So we can
Mm-hmm.
pick one of those. And if we go into, I'm really stressed out, then we want to stop right there. We want to kind of check in. We want to take a few breaths, calm ourselves down to try to get ourselves to the state of, okay, wait a minute. I need to get to a point where I'm just feeling a little stressed, or I'm feeling good, or I'm feeling great. And often what we can do is just ask ourselves three little questions. Some of the questions are, why? What is my strongest feeling? Do I need support for this? How can I shift this? And the other three questions are, what am I joyful for? What am I grateful for? Um, what do I love? And when we just immediately take, okay, I'm feeling very stressed out. Here's the problem. So we don't want to just ignore the stress. So we go into like, why am I feeling this way? Do I need support for this? What do I need for this? Then we go into those three questions of, what do I feel grateful for? What do I feel joy about? What brings me love? And once you shift your
Yeah.
brain, you automatically shift your entire energies. And so you shut yourself off from the sympathetic into the parasympathetic. And then while you're eating, to just take breaths and maybe even put down your fork, to chew the food. Simply that. How often are we going through our meals and we're 3 gulps, done? We don't even coat the food with our saliva. So we can
Right.
chew the food. We can take a
And if it,
breath, oxygenate us.
yeah, if it
Yeah.
doesn't get broken down to a certain point, you're not getting the food's coming out again without getting assimilated, because down at that like lower level, you're not able to absorb. So that
Right.
like that piece is so important.
Yes. Yeah.
And one of the ways that, too, is just simply, even if you do have to be on the go, can you sit down for a minute? Can you take like 3 to 5 to 10 deep breaths? And a lot of times just connecting with your breath and your body in that way can move you out of sympathetic. Even if you still have like something stressful out there that you might have to deal with later on, if you can just shift in that moment, you're setting yourself up for a better habit of eating, but also a better habit of being, because the more you make that shift, the more you're able to, right?
And it becomes such a habit. Like the daily check-in is like whenever I sit down to a meal now, sometimes even before I'm even drinking a drink, I'll connect to it, see what is it going to have a flavor, or is it just going to be water? How do I feel when I'm drinking that in? Am I gulping because I'm trying so fast to get it in? Or can I really taste this? Is it really something I can taste in my mouth? So anytime we're just kind of coming back and checking with ourselves, and if we have those, those feelings of, okay, this is not, I am a little bit stressed, I can feel myself not calming down. Every time we have those moments of check-in, it's really just honoring where we are, what we are, and then allowing ourselves to make those gentle shifts. And the more we practice this, the more it becomes a habit. And then the more we sit down, and our habit to eat is, I have to be calm. Or our habit to eat is, food makes me calm. So food doesn't become something we emotionally eat. So food is actually something that creates peace, creates nourishment. We use food as something that is calming our system. And then taking, not rushing through our meals. I mean, really having even ideally a 20-minute meal time. How fast are we going through our meals? It's like if you timed yourself, the majority of people will think, oh, I have a half-hour lunch break, yet they take 5 minutes to gulp down their sandwich. Eating, chewing, swallowing, taking another bite. I mean, it's just like they're not. There's absolutely no awareness.
Now it's like my kids, when they go in school, not every day, but oftentimes they will tell me that they didn't get to finish because they're on thing. Isn't that so sad? Like, okay, off to class.
Yeah, our culture. It's the culture. Like the culture is taking away some of our primitive best skills to be able to heal ourselves. And our culture is saying, you must be fast paced. You don't have a choice. We're only going to give you, a 15-minute lunch break or 20. My daughter's school was 20. So 20 minutes, like, yeah, I try to give us at least 30 minutes at dinner time, and we can't leave the table. And eventually they'll say they're quickly done, and they'll take even more bites, finishing their entire plate because they're just sitting there, and it gives them more opportunity for themselves to calm down, get out of their stress response of where they want to go and what they want to be doing. They stay present and finish their food.
Yeah.
And these skills,
I think,
it's so, sorry.
you go ahead. You
yeah,
go
these
ahead.
skills are so important for us because when we come into this shift and change, everyone around us sees it. If we go out to eat with friends, they're watching, they're absorbing, they're feeling like, oh, I want to slow down eating, like I'm going to finish my meal too fast. I want to slow it down. Or if we're with our children, they're seeing like, why do I have to rush through a meal? My mom calmly sits down and is eating her food. So it becomes like
Mm,
once we all apply this to our own lives, we're really creating a ripple effect, helping everyone
yeah,
cope with this emotional eating.
yeah, yeah. So instead of trying to fit whatever is going on, right? Like, say you go out to eat with, family, or like you said, like, instead of fitting in, when we stand up and do what we know to be best for ourselves, you're not just doing a service to yourself, you're
Right.
standing up and making a difference because of the ripple effect, like, and then even talking about it, like, not being, I know when I started making a lot of healthy choices for myself, I had this self-consciousness around it, like worrying that, because I was observing that some people do have the I mean, I've had people make comments before, like distant family, to say, like, oh, you're, I don't know, you think you're better, or you like, this isn't good enough for you, like our food, the way we eat, or whatever. And so I had this whole thing around it, like, I need to try to just, so I didn't want to talk to people about it. I felt like there was this huge gap and I didn't know how
Mhm.
to address it. But
Yeah.
now, it's just talking. Stand up for yourself, be
Yes.
conscious in how you
Yes.
communicate, and just say whatever, this is why I do this. You
Yes.
can do it too if you want, but if you don't, I'm not judging you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And it's making such a big impact if you when we do what we know to be true instead
Yes.
of trying to fit in.
Yes. And I mean, if we are putting ourselves first as first priority, it can oftentimes become offensive to others because they do realize that it's hard to do that. And if anybody is defensive, it's because they're not feeling validated for themselves or they're questioning themselves, which is what offers and makes us respond in defensiveness. So as if
Mhm.
we are standing true to ourselves and what we believe in our shifts and our habits and trying to make a better lifestyle for us and those that we are around, then automatically we might get some of those people in our world that do offer criticism towards it. And simply, if we continue to hold that ground, we'll either be an example of strength, change, and honoring self, or they will desire to not want to be around us, which possibly could also be of benefit. But very rarely does that happen. Very rarely. It's usually they want more of it because they also seek within themselves some spot that needs to be worked on, shift, and change. And we all are about change. So
Yeah.
it's so important that we step into the world with that courage to say, this is something that does need to be worked with, and our culture is not offering us that help. We are kind of being sucked into systems and cultures that don't necessarily feed or fuel the holistic way of human life. And we're
Mhm.
we're responding with more disease, with more stress, with more anxiety, and with more issues than we ever have before on this planet. So it's really important that we do step up and say, there's enough of us like-minded people that we can offer a little bit of shift and change, an example of where we can go and how we can heal
Yeah.
ourselves and then also
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah. I was rereading the, like, very first part of Sally Fallon's book Nourishing Traditions last night,
Yeah.
because my mom and I were talking about some stuff, and I was wanting to, like, just remember, it's about cholesterol and how, like, there's such a big deal about cholesterol in our country, and it's really not as big of a deal as other things.
Yeah.
But it's so, like, I'm paraphrasing, but thing that she opens with in the book is that never before in human history have people been so obsessed with diet and health, and never before have they been so unhealthy.
Yes. And it's so true. It's so fascinating. And everything that I have studied and my passion, my research, and my own experience of transforming myself, which is a lifelong transformation, it all comes from what we are thinking about up here. What beliefs are we having about ourselves? If we are going through the world in just this stressful situation where we're always not present and we're always thinking of something in the future that hasn't even come, and we're never present for what life is offering us right now, then
Yeah.
we're never going to heal. It doesn't matter what we're feeding ourselves. Like I said before, if you can eat all salads and smoothies, it doesn't matter if you're in a stress response. They're not going to be assimilated, and your body is not going to break them down and use them.
Yeah.
So it happens up
And
here. It's being in the mind, in the brain, recreating new habits, recreating new forms of beliefs of ourselves. If we step up to the table and we say, I can't do that, I can't eat that way, I cannot eat slow down, like I can't chew my food that much, we are blocking our own healing and our own transformation.
right.
So
Yeah.
what happens here first, our alignment, our minds, and then we watch our bodies naturally shift and change because we're finally able to connect in the presence. And that's
Yeah.
where all healing is.
Right. That reminds me of like one of the things that feel like I've been talking about a lot lately is the idea that anytime you hear an excuse, any excuse, anything where you say like, I can't do this because, that's something to pay attention to.
Yeah. Yep.
And to look at, because then, I mean, it's just an excuse.
Yeah.
Right. It's just like my kids.
Yeah. I'll lose weight when I finish this diet. I'll get the body I need when this happens. I'll this when, like, we can immediately come into a visualization of what we desire of ourselves the moment we want to shift. We can say to ourselves, I want no more anxiety right now. And be in that body of no anxiety presently without any shift or change. Because once we believe it here and we can see it and imagine and know it can happen here, we will create it here. If we can't see it here and we continue to see that we can't get there, or that every diet's not going to work, or every diet is a challenge, then we block ourselves. It's going to be too challenging to shift and move into a new space. So we have to believe it, trust it, know it first before you take any steps. And that's with emotional eating. We have to believe we can control these emotions. And there's tools like emotional release if there's some that keep coming up. I offer an emotional release, energetic release of your emotions, and we can go into some of that. Maybe you can link it if that is of what anybody needs. But there's tools out there to even rid some of those blocks that we have held on to since childhood. We can reframe them and rewire them, but that does become challenging because in this day and age, very few of us have so much time to just be very present in our mental state. But as we slowly release them, as we slowly gain new practices, we watch all kinds of transformation in our bodies, and it can be spontaneous. It's amazing. Like, miracles are simply just us believing something new happen.
Yeah. Something's breaking up there and you're a little frozen. And some freeze. Are
you there? I lost you for a minute.
Yeah, I think your internet, like you froze and we couldn't hear anything except static for a little bit.
Oh, darn. I'm sorry. I live in the mountains, so we can get kind of spotty Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Yeah, everything you're saying is so true. So I think there's so many reasons when people try to, go on a diet, try a new thing out. There's so many reasons that those don't work. One of them is that you're just doing something somebody told you to do and not listening inside. Another way is like a lot of diets don't have anything to do with how do you actually make a new habit? How do you change?
Right.
And another piece is like the emotional stuff.
Right.
Like, if you're just following a diet in a book or, in a recipe book, you're not going to get this piece. Like, because anytime we try to make positive changes, there's always going to be resistance that comes up.
Yeah.
And if you don't have something, someone, some guidance in that area, you're just going to swing back in the other direction harder.
Yeah.
Most likely.
Yeah. And then deprivation, what we don't want to do ever for ourselves is deprive ourselves. And a lot of diets say, well, you have to cut out this and this and this and this and this. And they deprive us of some of the things that make us feel like I can't have fun with my friends and go out and enjoy a social gathering fully. I have to put up all these walls, and it makes us feel uncomfortable and insecure. So what do? We recluse and we don't even go. And we hold ourselves in our home because now we have all of these diets that we are trying to put on ourselves, and really it's creating more of the stress response.
Yeah. More and more of the like allergies or low tolerance for things too.
Yes. Yeah. I've learned so much in my in my experience that it's more about how you eat your food than sometimes even what you're eating. Because if you're really focused on how you are eating, you're going to immediately be able to come into like, I am eating this, I am feeling this. Sometimes there is a moment in my day where I watch my kids eat and I grab something and stick it mindlessly into my mouth. And as I'm chewing it, and I'm like, I don't even want this. And I'll spit it out and be like, why did I put that in my mouth? It's such an emotional habit to just grab their leftovers and eat them. And it's like, I don't even need that or want it or desire it. But now that I've been so aware of how I eat, then once something hits my mouth, it creates a whole new response in my brain that says, why is your mouth moving? What are you doing? What are you eating? So it brings this new thoughtful mindfulness to it that even if the food doesn't feel right, say it's a processed cracker and it doesn't feel right, I don't even want to chew it anymore. It's too dry. My mouth doesn't recognize it. I want to spit it out. And my body has learned to kind of crave some foods that do offer more beneficial nourishment. Like when I was first starting my herbalist journey, I could not stand bitter food. I couldn't stand anything bitter. It was like, what is wrong with that? It needs more salt or it needs more sugars and sweeteners. And I come across a lot of people who need the most help. They don't want to touch any bitter food. And yet that is what's going to nourish our gut flora, and it's going to start the juices and the digestive response. And so here now I crave the bitter foods. And it's funny, I can go out into the yard and just pick them and eat them right out of the ground as bitter as they come. And I watch my kids slowly adapting these habits too, simply by how we eat. How we are eating is so important. It'll shift us naturally to where we need to be if we're focused, mindful, taking in that daily just checking in with our emotions, our breath before we eat, finding ourselves calming down, even if we have to just close our eyes and just let it all go. I'm going to eat now. This is what it smells like. Oh, my eyes don't even have to be open to smell it. I'm ready. This is why a lot of cultures have a morning prayer or a gratitude before food, to pause, to be grateful, to connect in a different way. Let the body relax, even invite the body. Food is going to come in. Let's use it. Let's use it to the most beneficial way, talking to our body as a friend and almost rewiring our relationship to food, to ourselves, and to this earth that is offering these foods.
so beautifully said. Such a beautiful picture of how to eat and how to
How
assimilate.
to eat.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Yeah. It's so true. If we could just so for some people watching this, if this is really foreign, you know, like if you're like a person who overeats a lot, if you're a person who eats mindlessly, a person who, you know, just isn't thinking about it, like I want to say, don't beat yourself
I
up
was just
because
going to
you're such
say,
a product
yes.
of society, right?
Yes, no judgment here. In fact, I always offer my clients, be curious. Be more
Yeah.
curious about yourself instead of judgment. Like, why am I eating so anxiously? If you have curiosity about yourself, then again, we have to rewrite our beliefs about ourselves. If we're judging ourselves, I put on extra weight because I've been eating emotionally. Oh no, I judge. How could I have done that to myself? Then we immediately are blocking the belief that there is any option for change. So be more curious about why we do things
Yeah,
than judge.
and you're really making that happen. Like you're bringing that more
Yeah.
physically into your of like I am getting heavier. I am, you know, because I did this bad thing. Like
Mhm.
that's you're bringing it
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I like what you said, get curious, because that for people, if this is brand new to you, maybe like these steps, maybe that feels like something you can't just try on
Right.
immediately. So getting curious can be just a little tiny micro habit, a little kaizen, as we
Yeah.
call it, like step
Yeah.
in the journey of unpacking, figuring out, you know, and resolving, finding a resolution.
Yeah.
And then go back and watch this and write down those
Yeah.
3 steps
Yeah.
so that once you feel like you can do one, you know,
Right.
and then see how it goes.
Yeah.
And I'd love to, yeah.
And that's why, we offer our mentoring, coaching towards people, because change does take a new identity of self. We have to recreate this new identity of self, this new belief of self, and then our bodies and everything naturally starts to shift and change. And that's why we offer some of this support. This is what coaching and mentoring does, offers support, accountability, and a system. When we have new systems, we break away from our cultural systems. We break away from the systems that have been ingrained in us from our past and our parenting and our social expectations. We break away from the systems to create a new one. We have accountability of ourselves and our mentors and our coaches, and we have support. And that's one of the beauties of why I believe you, at least I know me, this is why I came into this work, is to offer this, because I know for myself, if I didn't have my own coaches and my own support system and my own mentoring, I would not be able to have come to this control of my mind and my beliefs of myself. And that's all we can do here in anything we're working with, is find more love for us that will allow us to not self-sabotage as much. It's a learning process. We all will do it, but when we learn and we have these mentors guiding us, that's what we get to do with each other, is we get to help each other through our experiences. And sometimes we feel like we're so alone. That's how I felt for a long time. I was so alone. I didn't have the skills, and the insecurity and the guilt and the self-sabotage is what stopped me from really earlier in my youth moving into a place where there was more growth and awareness.
Yeah. Yes.
So
all of that.
Yes.
So
this has been so wonderful, Jessica. I look forward to doing this with you much more.
Yeah, let's definitely.
All right.
I love conversations, and I think that this was really insightful for people. Your path to awakening your inner healer, because we are all meant to be self-healers.
Right.
And so I will post some links below, or Tara can post some below, like, and just let let people know how, if you want to get in touch with her, you can. Yeah, I just love you and love your work. And thank you so much for being
Thank
here.
you, Jessica. Namaste.
Namaste. Bye, everyone.